the challenge for us, is particularly in the diet that we have most available to us now, is that there is an excessive amount of sources of omega-6s and very few sources of omega-3s. However, we have evolved and still require to operate best and to minimize inflammation. We really need a very, very close ratio in our body. So in the food we eat, we really need, it doesn't have to be 50-50, but fairly close in terms of omega-3s and omega-6s. Well, the reason being, omega-3s function as a anti-inflammatory in our body, and omega-6s function as a pro-inflammatory in the body. So if we have a lot more 6s, which are pro-inflammatory, and fewer omega-3s, this is where chronic or silent inflammation is why it's so much on the rise. And even if you had absolutely every whole food in your diet and no processed foods at all, we still have more sources of omega-6. Good foods like whole grains, poultry. Those are omega-6s. Omega-3s are nuts, green leafy vegetables, cold water fish, predominantly the salmon and the cold water fish, and anchovies and sardines. And so there are fewer omega-3 sources. Every extracted oil out there, the dominant of vegetable oils are omega-6 sources. Canola oil has some omega-3, but not a lot. And foods that used to be omega-3s have changed, like, for instance, beef. When cows ate grass, remember, greens are a source of omega-3s. When cows were grass-fed, they were an omega-3 source. But now the dominant of all of our protein sources like that are fed grain. Grain is an omega-6 source. So now the meat that used to be an omega-3 source is an omega-6 source. And sort of similarly to if a farmed fish is not fed algae, its natural diet, and it's fed grains, well, there you go. You're losing some of the benefit. It still may have some, but it won't have as much.
And people can buy that stuff at Whole Foods, right? Grass-fed.
Yes, grass-fed beef. So, yes.
Would you explain the difference, please, between the grass-fed beef and the
Finished beef? Yes. It's exactly what it sounds like. A grass-fed is going to have been fed grass from its whole life that it can consume, once it's done with its mother's milk. It's grass-fed only. Grass-finished is grain-fed, finished at the end with some grass. It's literally what it is. So, not so good. Because it looks good, It's pretty much marketing, sorry to say.
It's put on the package.
It's cheap, right? It's cheap to feed them that cornmeal.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. And then it gets into all of, what's in the corn, genetically modified, all these things which we're not going to talk about. Yes.
Do you have time to talk a little bit about dairy?
Sure. What do you want to know?
Is it good for you?
Well, I'm not going to, all right, so I have to be politically correct and say that it's not on our plate because the board, the medical advisors, and we have a pretty long board of advisors, and you can go on the site and see who they are, all feel that dairy is not really or shouldn't be a dominant source of food in our diet. So let me back. What's the main thing you go to dairy for, other than that you like the taste or something? But what do you look to it for from a nutrient point of view? Calcium and protein. Okay. Right. Okay. So it is not your best source of calcium, mainly because of the protein. The ratio, it's so high in protein that it actually makes it very hard for our body to absorb calcium, and it doesn't come along with the magnesium and other things our body needs. You really need a calcium, about 50, I can't think anymore, sorry, a 1 to 2 ratio. So you need, say, 100 grams or milligrams of calcium, you need 50 of magnesium, approximately, for your body to actually absorb it. Greens have exactly that ratio. That's how they come to us, along with vitamin K. So it's much more bioavailable. Also, because dairy is so high in protein, and this is what sugar does to us too, very high protein. So if you have a diet that's very dominant in any animal foods, and I'm not saying you have to be a vegetarian or vegan, I'm not saying that at all, but if the dominant player is the animal protein, whether through dairy or other animal proteins, It's, for most people, it sets up a condition in the body that's kind of an acidic condition. And if you remember, I said earlier, our body knows just what to do. Our body always wants to be in homeostasis. It wants balance. So if it's all of a sudden saying, I've got this acidic condition going on here, it's going to try to do something to correct that. And so what it does, it wants to pull some alkalizing element. And guess what it pulls? Calcium from our bones. So when you have a diet that's high sugar or high animal protein, that's most likely the greater source of osteoporosis than lack of calcium or lack of dairy in your diet.
And I think there's a fair amount of research now that talks about acidity versus alkalinity
Yes.
and all this stuff relative to the breakdown of cells in precancerous conditions and all that stuff. So
There's a lot of research, but it's not something that I'm able to really speak to. So if you're worried about your bones, eat a lot of greens, reduce refined sugars and animal products in your diet, and enjoy dairy in moderation. There's a lot more. There's a lot more about dairy that that you'll hear.
And eggs are an animal protein?
Yes. Yes, they are. Now you can get omega-3 enriched eggs. That's because they fed the chickens algae, so they sort of become a delivery system for your omega-3s. Which it's minor, but it's something. Yes.
Herbal supplements with fish oil packaged.
Yeah. Okay. So, let's see. For most, whenever I talk about, I've talked about omega-3s and omega-6s, I've said, my personal feeling is no matter how clean your diet is and how hard as you try to get a balance of 3s and 6s, I think it's probably a good idea to consider discussing with your doctor a supplement with a high-quality fish oil. And I still do. I went through a period of time where I kind of questioned that, but I've come back to thinking it still is because it's just really challenging. And so some people will say, but I eat lots of plant sources of omega-3s, lots of nuts and flax meal and everything. And those are sources of omega-3s, but they're not, when we get omega-3s from nuts and greens and flax meal and other things like that, the plant sources, we have to our bodies need to make a conversion, an extra conversion to properly use them. And there's no way to know how efficiently you do that. Your body may convert very efficiently, mine may not. And actually fish they sort of do that for us.